Chuck roast versus pot roast. Today we find out. Welcome to Real Easy Cooking with Robert. I'm Robert, and today we're going to make chuck roast, which is slightly different than pot roast, mainly in the way it's cooked and presented. We're cooking in the same way in a slow cooker, but you'll notice there's some things we're doing different than we did if you ever watched the pot roast video. Even though, again, this is chuck roast. So first thing we're going to do is we're doing rutabaga instead of potato. Now this rutabaga comes with this waxy coat on it. What'll be nice about rutabaga, so to get the wax off, is you just scrape it off with a knife. Which also, you gotta peel it anyway, so it's a 2-for-1 that way. You get the peel off, the wax. That's because rutabagas are imported. They're originally native to Russia, I guess, where they were grown from. They're a very hard winter plant. It should work better than potato because it won't break apart after hours of cooking in the moisture. Like potato tends to get mushy, rutabagas do not get mushy when they're cooked. I mean, they get a little softer because right now they are pretty damn rock hard. All right, that one's de-waxed. Now to repeat. Oh, there's a bad part. We just cut that right out. Folks, it's a very hardy plant. Okay. Woohoo, fast. All right. I'm going to clear off my cutting board here. Yes, as you notice, there is a wet paper towel underneath the cutting board that keeps it from sliding. Now, take this, and we have to Alright, let me repeat with the second rutabaga. Okay, now that we have a good layer of rutabaga in here, the meat will go on top of that. We'll pack some of the carrots around that, a layer of celery and some mushrooms on top of that, but we need to add some moisture to there. So we're going to add some red wine vinegar. That's about 1/4 cup. We're going to add a little bit of Worcestershire sauce. About a tablespoon, which happens to be the end of that bottle anyway. A couple dabs of liquid smoke. You'll see why we're adding this. Now that's still not really enough moisture if you look in here to cook. Sure, the rutabaga has some moisture, but you need more than that for a crock pot to really work. It should have at least 1 inch of water in the bottom because of the way the heating elements work and the safety features in it. So you have to have some moisture in there, enough to contact to spread the heat through. So we will add a little bit of water. I'm going to add 12 ounces of water. Okay, maybe 8 ounces of water. And that was hot water. Now, the problem with crock pots is it usually takes about, they claim, up to an hour for it to first heat up. So we might as well start heating it now on high. And this can start cooking now, which really isn't going to cook much. It's just going to get the rutabaga slightly warmer. It's going to really heat up the ceramic in this hour here. And that's what we're going for while we prep the rest of the stuff. So there's where we would pull out the celery, check, chop that and get that ready. And I like lots of celery, so we're eating all of this. Surprise, family. You're having celery tonight. Except for the hearts and the foot. Yes, you can save the tops for soup. You can replant the foot. You can do any of that. None of that sounds easy. You know, why am I cutting that the hard way? Easier way is just cut on the side it's already facing. Switch hands with a knife. God gave you two hands, use both of them. Get rid of this part. The base I already cut when I cleaned it all off of the foot. These are going to go pretty much on top. I'm trying to get the longest ones out first so I can come to the right length. Don't want to come all too short. That's a good compromise. I'll set these off to the side. Now, carrots. I went through the bag of carrots. Here's where it's best, okay, believe it or not, these were the thickest carrots in the bag. Normally carrots come really thick at times. I don't know, must be food shortages or something. These were the thickest carrots, which is good. Thick carrots work great in roast. Thin carrots work great for just eating. So, I'll take these. Break off both ends. Dispose of these. Come into about the same size by volume. That means that the thinner ones are longer than the thick ones. So if you were to weigh them, they would both weigh about the same. I got whole fresh mushrooms. They've already been pre-washed. I'm still going to rinse them again because there's still shit on them. Okay, mushrooms are ready. Now here's where normally I would be pan frying the meat to get that shear on all of it. But this is chuck roast as opposed to normally a lot of the roasts I use are more of a top sirloin or a sirloin roast. So you notice this has a lot more fat in it. There's a lot more fat to it, including part of a almost cartilage pre-bone. I mean, a lot more fat. So we're going to leave the fat on it and put it in there with it. The fat will cook out into everything else. And when cooking meat, fat is flavor. Repeat after me. Fat is flavor. So we can just put this right in. We don't even have to pan fry it. That makes it even easier if you get a good cut of meat like this with the bone in it and everything. My wife did well on that one. Stuff carrots around it. And these is like Lincoln logs to hold them in place. Put celery on top of that. Throw some whole mushrooms on there. Always put your lid on your crock pot. A little step they don't tell you much about. Pull it out. A lot of people leave them underneath the counter. There's little vent holes and stuff, and the steam gets up here. Rots your wood on your cabinets. So pull it out to the front. That way, if there's a fire or something, more of a chance that your whole house won't burn down. Set it on high. Set it for 4 hours or so. Come back then. It should be done. So once it's set on high, we set it and forget it. And we'll be back in 4 hours. Okay, it's been time. We've actually let it cook a little longer today because I like it more tender. Nice thing about cooking anything in a crock pot is it usually stays good and you cook it longer than you want if it doesn't fit your schedule. And with a big chunk of meat, the longer you cook it, the more tender it becomes, because the connective tissue connects all the meat, breaks down, so then it becomes more tender. That's one of the reasons to cook in a crock pot versus a big stove when you're making something small like this, is the number of hours it takes. I could use this and heat the whole house all winter, you know, just making long roasts and stuff, but better to use this. It uses less electricity, it's more energy efficient. It doesn't, especially if you're going to cook this in the summertime, heat up your whole house. So we can turn it off. This one has locking lid. See how it looks now. So mushrooms have shrunk in size, everything's considerably smaller, and has a lot more liquid. Well, I want some mushrooms. A couple pieces of celery. I like carrots too. Have to try them. And some meat. You can see the bone has broken away. Should lift right out. It did. And it's extremely hot, so I can't give it to the cats. Plus they wouldn't know what to do with something that big. Don't even really need a knife, it just pulls right apart. Now I do want to get down at the bottom to the rutabaga. Rutabaga soaking under meat like that is amazing. It puts potatoes to shame. All right, there's now add some pepper. Meat takes surprisingly a lot of pepper on it on chuck roast. Every recipe calls for extra pepper on it. The meat just pulls apart with a fork. Okay, so comparing the chuck roast recipe to the pot roast recipe, the jus in the chuck roast is I made it a lot thinner, a lot less artificial flavors, because of the rutabaga in the bottom. Rutabaga is absolutely amazing. I recommend that over potatoes anytime. And the extra pepper on the chuck roast at the end really makes a difference. Either way, I'm happy. It's meat and vegetables cooked many hours in a pot. How can you go wrong with it? Well, you can't. You never go wrong with it. It's meat and vegetables. We're good to go. So it's been Real Easy Cooking with Robert, and I'm done. Happens to be the end of that bottle anyway.